The ship was old and tired, just like its crew. Captain Park stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring out at the endless darkness of space. His ship had seen better days. The hull was covered in burn marks from plasma fire. The engines made strange sounds that worried the mechanics, but it still flew, and that was enough. They were going home. After 6 months of fighting the Syndicate, the worst pirates in the galaxy, and his 20 crew members were finally heading back to Earth. They had lost friends. They had seen terrible things. Now they just wanted to rest. "Captain, we are picking up a signal," said Lieutenant from her station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a scar running down her left cheek. She had been with for 3 years, and he trusted her more than anyone. "What kind of signal?" asked, walking over to her console. "Distress beacon. It is coming from Prime." Frowned. Prime belonged to the Imperium. They were an ancient race, thousands of years older than humans. They were tall and beautiful, with silver-blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were like crystals, and they lived for centuries. They also thought humans were nothing special. To them, humans were young, violent, and primitive. They had only been traveling in space for 200 years. They had been building empires when humans were still living in caves. Why would they send a distress signal? Wondered aloud. They have the largest fleet in this sector. Shook her head. "I do not know, Captain, but the signal is weak. It is encrypted, but our systems managed to decode part of it." She pressed a button and a voice filled the bridge. It was small and frightened, clearly belonging to a child. "Help, anyone. They took me, please, I am scared. Someone please help me." The bridge went silent. Every crew member stopped what they were doing and listened. "Play it again," said quietly. The voice came again, filled with fear and desperation. Felt something twist in his chest. He had a niece back on Earth, about the same age as this voice. The thought of her being scared and alone somewhere made his hands tighten into fists. "Can we trace where this is coming from?" he asked. Sergeant Han, the intelligence officer, was already working on it. She was young but brilliant, with a talent for finding information that others could not. Her fingers flew across her console. "The signal originated from Station," she reported. "It is a black market hub controlled by the Syndicate. Slavers, criminals, the worst of the worst." "Slavers," repeated, her voice cold. "They took a child to sell." Closed his eyes. Station was dangerous. His ship was damaged. His crew was exhausted. They had no backup, no support, and no reason to get involved. They had never done anything for humans. When Earth asked for help during the colony wars, they refused. When human refugees needed shelter, they closed their borders. They looked down on humanity like they were insects, not worth their time or attention. Why should he risk his people for a race that would not do the same for them? "Captain," said softly, "what are you thinking?" Opened his eyes and looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. Corporal, the demolitions expert, had his arms crossed, but his eyes were hard with anger. Medic Song was gripping her medical bag, her face pale. Private, barely 22 years old, was staring at the floor with clenched fists. "That is a child," said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "I do not care who her people are. That is a scared kid calling for help." "The private is right," agreed. "Since when do we let politics decide if we save children?" Felt a small smile form on his face. This was why he loved his crew. They were tired, hurt, and far from home, but they still wanted to do what was right. He said, "How far is Station?" 14 hours at maximum speed, Captain." "And our ship, can we make it?" Chief Engineer Specialist O spoke up from the back. He was a quiet man who loved machines more than people. "The engines will hold, probably. I would give it 70% chance." 70%, repeated with a dry laugh. "Those are better odds than usual." Nodded slowly. He thought about the mission, the risks, the chance of failure. Then he thought about that small voice crying out in the darkness of space, hoping someone would hear. "Set a course for station," he ordered. "Maximum speed." His eyes widened slightly, but she did not argue. She simply nodded and began entering the coordinates. "Course set, Captain. We will arrive in 14 hours. I want everything you can find on station. Maps, security systems, patrol schedules, everything." "Yes, Captain." "Check our weapons and explosives. Make sure everything is ready." "With pleasure, sir." "Prepare the medical bay. We might have injuries coming back." "Already on it, Captain." Looked around the bridge one more time. His crew was moving with purpose now, the tiredness replaced by determination. They knew this mission was dangerous. They knew they might not come back, but they were going anyway. Because that was what humans did. The galaxy thought they were primitive. Other races laughed at their short and their constant fighting. But those races did not understand what made humans special. It was not their technology or their strength. It was their stubborn refusal to ignore suffering, even when it would be easier to look away. Walked to the main viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a child was waiting. A child who had called for help and received only silence from her own people. But not from his people, never from his people. "Hold on, little one," he whispered to the darkness. "We are coming." The Resolute turned slowly in space, its damaged hull groaning with the effort. Then its engines flared bright blue, and it shot forward into the void, racing toward a station full of monsters to save a girl they had never met. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller. Home would have to wait. Some things were more important than rest. Queen had not slept in 3 days. She stood in the throne room of her palace on Prime, surrounded by advisors and generals who spoke in urgent whispers. The room was beautiful, made of white crystal that caught the light of the twin suns and scattered it into rainbows across the walls, but saw none of it. She saw only darkness. Her daughter was gone. Princess, only 12 cycles old, had been taken from the palace 3 days ago. The slavers had attacked during a diplomatic reception, using stolen codes to bypass the security systems. By the time the guards responded, the slavers were already gone and was with them. Remembered the moment she learned the truth. She had been speaking with an ambassador from the consortium when her chief of security burst into the room, his silver-blue face pale with fear. The words he spoke shattered her world. "The princess has been taken." Since then had done everything a queen could do. She sent her fastest ships after the slavers, but they escaped into neutral space where her fleet could not follow. She offered a ransom so large it could buy a small planet, but they refused. They did not want money. They wanted to hurt her. The Imperium was proud and ancient. For thousands of years, they had been the most powerful civilization in this region of space. Other races bowed to them, feared them, respected them. They wanted to show the galaxy that even the mighty could be brought low. They were going to sell the princess at auction. The daughter of Queen, sold like property to the highest bidder. The shame would follow them for generations. But did not care about shame. She only cared about her little girl. "Your Majesty," said Admiral, her chief military advisor, "our fleet is stretched too thin. The border disputes with them have pulled most of our ships to the outer territories. We cannot spare enough forces for a rescue mission." "Then pull them back," said, her voice cold. "My daughter is more important than any border. If we do that, they will see it as weakness. They will attack our colonies." "Then let them attack." The room went silent, realized she had shouted. She closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. A queen did not shout. A queen remained calm, controlled, dignified. But right now, she was not a queen. She was a mother whose child had been stolen. "What about the Galactic Coalition?" asked Minister, the head of Foreign Relations. "Surely they will help." "I sent them a message yesterday," replied bitterly. They expressed their deep concern and offered their thoughts of solidarity, nothing more. The same. The Terrans almost laughed. The Terrans. Humans. Those strange little creatures who had stumbled into space barely 200 years ago. They lived such short lives, burning bright and fast like stars that could not decide whether to shine or explode. They were always fighting, always struggling, always pushing forward without any sense of patience or wisdom. What could humans possibly do that the great Imperium could not? The humans have no interest in our affairs, she said. They are too busy with their own wars. Actually, Your Majesty, said a young aide near the door, we received a response from a human vessel. Turned to look at him. What did you say? The aide stepped forward nervously. A human ship detected the distress beacon we sent. They responded asking for more information. They are changing course toward the signal origin. One ship? Admiral asked with obvious disbelief. One human ship thinks it can do what our entire fleet cannot. What ship is it? Asked. The aide checked his data pad. The Resolute, Your Majesty. A small frigate. Military records show it has been engaged in combat operations against the Syndicate for the past 6 months. The ship is damaged and appears to be returning to Earth. A damaged ship with a tired crew, said, shaking his head. They will turn back when they realize what they are facing. Said nothing. She walked to the large window that overlooked the capital city. The crystal towers sparkled in the sunlight, and flying vehicles moved between them like silver fish in a stream. It was beautiful, peaceful, perfect. And somewhere far away, her daughter was crying. Your Majesty, Minister said gently, perhaps you should rest. You have not slept since. I will sleep when my daughter is home, interrupted, not before. She thought about the human ship, this Resolute, with its damaged hull and exhausted crew. What were they thinking? Why would they respond to a distress call? Her people had never helped them. Her people had barely acknowledged their existence. Yet they were coming anyway. Did not understand humans. She had met a few over the centuries, always briefly, always with a sense of distant curiosity. They were so different from where her people were calm and patient, humans were emotional and impulsive. Where thought in centuries, humans thought in moments. Perhaps that was why they were responding. They did not stop to think about politics or consequences. They heard a child crying for help and they came. It was foolish, it was reckless, it would probably fail. But it was also something no one else in the galaxy had done. Monitor the human ship, ordered quietly. Tell me if they change course. You think they will actually attempt a rescue? Asked. Turned away from the window. Her eyes were tired, but beneath the exhaustion was something she had not felt in 3 days. A tiny spark of hope. I think, she said slowly, that humans are full of surprises. She walked out of the throne room, leaving her advisors to their whispers and doubts. She made her way through the crystal corridors to his bedroom. The door was still open, just as it had been when the guards found it empty. Stepped inside and sat on her daughter's bed. The sheets still smelled like flowers and sunshine and childhood. On the pillow was a small stuffed creature that called. The princess had slept with it every night since she was 3 cycles old. Picked up the toy and held it against her chest. Please, she whispered to the empty room, to the universe, to anyone who might be listening. Please bring her back to me. Far across the galaxy, a damaged human frigate pushed its engines to the limit, racing toward a station full of monsters. Its captain did not know that a queen was praying for him. He did not know that the fate of an empire rested on his shoulders. He only knew that somewhere ahead, a little girl was waiting. And he was not going to let her down. Station looked like something from a nightmare. It floated in the darkness between star systems, a massive structure built from stolen ships and abandoned factories welded together over centuries. Rust covered every surface. Strange lights flickered in windows. Ships came and went constantly, carrying cargo that no one asked questions about. Captain Park studied the station through the Resolute's main viewport. His shoulder still ached from an old injury, and his eyes burned from lack of sleep. But his mind was sharp and focused. "That is the ugliest thing I have ever seen," Corporal said from beside him. "It is not a beauty contest," Lieutenant replied. "It is a rescue mission." "Both statements are true," agreed with a grim smile. Sergeant Hen walked up to the group with a data pad in her hands. She had been working non-stop for 14 hours, gathering every piece of information she could find about station. "Here is what we know," she began. "The station has approximately 3,000 permanent residents, mostly criminals, slavers, and black market dealers. The syndicate controls the central sections, including the main auction house where the princess is being held." "Security?" asked. "Heavy, armed guards at every entrance, surveillance systems throughout the corridors, and quick response teams that can reach any location in less than 5 minutes." "What about the princess specifically?" Pulled up an image on her pad. "She is being held in a containment cell on level 7 near the auction house. The auction is scheduled to begin in 12 hours. After that, she will be sold and taken off the station." "Then we have 12 hours," said. "What is the plan?" "We cannot go in through the main docks," explained. "They will scan our ship and identify us as military. I found an old maintenance entrance on the lower levels. It is rarely used and poorly guarded. We can dock there and move through the service tunnels to level 7. "How many guards between us and the princess?" "At least 50, maybe more." Whistled low. 50 against 8, I like those odds. "You are insane," said flatly. "That is why you love me, Lieutenant." Raised his hand for silence. 8 volunteers. That is all we can spare while keeping the ship ready for immediate departure. Who is coming? Every hand on the bridge went up. Felt a warmth spread through his chest. His crew, his family. They were all willing to walk into hell for a child they had never met. He named them one by one. "Corporal No and Private Bay, you are with me. Everyone else stays with the ship. If we do not return in 6 hours, leave without us." "Captain," someone started to protest. "That is an order. The ship and the crew come first. Understood." Silence, then a reluctant chorus of "Yes, Captain." 2 hours later, the strike team made their way through the dark maintenance tunnels of station. The air smelled like rust and decay. Strange sounds echoed from somewhere far away, sounds that might have been machines or might have been screams. Led the way, his weapon raised and ready. Behind him, the team moved in practiced silence. They had trained for missions like this, but training never quite prepared you for the reality. "Contact ahead," whispered. 2 guards at the next junction." Made a quick hand signal and moved forward like shadows. There was a brief struggle, 2 soft thuds, and then silence. "Clear," reported. They kept moving. Level 7 was busier than the tunnels. Here, the corridors were filled with merchants, criminals, and buyers of every species. The team split into pairs, trying to blend in with the crowd, and headed directly toward the containment area. They were almost there when everything went wrong. A guard stepped out of a side corridor and came face to face with. The guard's eyes went wide with recognition. You are the human who destroyed our base on 5. His response was immediate. His fist connected with the guard's face, dropping him to the ground. But the damage was done. The guard had already pressed his alarm. Red lights began flashing. Sirens screamed. "So much for quiet," muttered. "Move now," shouted. The team abandoned stealth and ran. Guards poured into the corridors from every direction, their weapons firing bursts of plasma energy. The walls exploded around the humans as they sprinted toward the containment cells. Private Bay was the first to fall. A plasma bolt caught him in the chest, and he went down without a sound. There was no time to stop. "Keep going," ordered, his heart breaking. They reached the containment area, a long hallway lined with reinforced doors. Checked her scanner. Third cell on the left. Ran to the door and placed an explosive charge. Fire in the hole. The explosion tore the door from its frame. Smoke filled the air. And there, huddled in the corner of the cell, was a small figure with silver-blue skin and wide crystalline eyes. Princess. She looked up at with a mixture of terror and hope. He was covered in sweat and dirt, his armor from plasma fire, his face grim and determined. "I am here to take you home," he said. The princess did not move. She was shaking, frozen with fear. Knelt down and extended his hand. "I know I look scary. I know you do not know me, but I promise I will not let anything hurt you. Take my hand, princess." Slowly, hesitantly, reached out and placed her small hand in his. "Now run." They ran. The team formed a protective circle around the princess as they fought their way back toward the maintenance tunnels. Guards came at them from every direction. Explosives collapsed corridors behind them, slowing the pursuit, and Corporal No held while the others advanced. Private stopped at a junction where two corridors met. Guards were coming from both directions. "Go," he shouted to the team. "I will hold them." No cried. "That is an order from a private," yelled back with a wild grin. "Now get the princess out." Wanted to argue, wanted to stay, wanted to save the young soldier who had so much life left to live. But the princess was his priority, his mission, his responsibility. "Move," he commanded, pulling along. They heard gunfire behind them, then an explosion, then silence. The team kept running. They reached the maintenance dock where their shuttle waited. Specialist O was covering the rear when a stray plasma bolt caught him in the side. He stumbled but kept moving, blood spreading across his uniform. Rushed to help him. "I am fine," he gasped. "Get on the shuttle." They made it aboard. The shuttle launched just as a wave of guards burst into the dock. Plasma fire bounced off the hull as they accelerated away from the station. Held the princess close as the shuttle rocked from the impacts. Her small body was trembling, but she was alive. She was safe. "We got her," reported, her voice cracking with emotion. "We actually got her." In the back of the shuttle, Medic Song was working frantically on his wound. Her hands were covered in blood, but she did not stop. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Come on, stay with me." His eyes met hers and he tried to smile. "Tell my sister, tell her I love her." Then his eyes closed, and his hand went limp. Screamed. Held the princess and closed his eyes. 2 soldiers, 2 friends, gone. But the mission was complete. He had promised to bring her home, and he would keep that promise. No matter the cost. The Resolute limped through space like a wounded animal. Its hull was covered in new scars from plasma fire. One of its engines was making a terrible grinding sound that worried everyone, but it was still flying, still carrying its precious cargo toward Prime. In the medical bay, Captain Park sat on a bed while Medic Song treated the wound on his shoulder. A plasma bolt had grazed him during the escape, burning through his armor and into the flesh beneath. The pain was sharp, but he had felt worse. What hurt more was the empty bed next to him, the bed where Specialist O should have been. "Hold still," said quietly. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. She had not cried since death. She had simply shut down, doing her job with mechanical precision. Said gently, "You should rest." "I will rest when everyone is treated." "Everyone is treated. I am the last one." Said nothing. She finished sealing his wound and stepped back. Then slowly, she sat down on the empty bed and stared at the wall. Did not know what to say. What words could possibly help? And had been close. Not romantic, but something deeper. They had been partners, companions, 2 people who understood each other without needing to speak. Now was gone, and in Private Bay. 3 soldiers who would never see Earth again. "Captain, A small voice came from the corner of the room. Turned to see Princess standing in the doorway. She had refused to leave the medical bay since they escaped, staying close to the humans who had saved her. They were normally tall and graceful, but was still young, barely reaching his chest. "You should be sleeping, Princess," he said. "I cannot sleep." She walked closer, her crystalline eyes studying his face. "Does it hurt, your wound?" "A little, but I have had worse." Nodded slowly. She glanced then at the empty bed, then back at the man who was here before, she said carefully. "The one he was your friend." "Yes, his name was O. He died because of me." "He died protecting you," corrected gently. "There is a difference." His eyes filled with tears. "I do not understand, your people and my people. We are not friends. We are barely anything. My mother's advisors say humans are primitive and violent. They say you only care about yourselves." "Do you believe that?" The princess was quiet for a long moment. "I did not know what to believe. I had never met a human before. But then you came. You came even though you did not have to. You lost your friends even though I am not your people." She looked up at him with confusion and wonder in her young eyes. Why did you come for me?" Thought carefully before answering. He thought about's grin as he held the junction alone. He thought about's last words about his sister. He thought about his own niece back on Earth, the one he had not seen in 6 months. "Because someone asked for help," he said finally, "and we were close enough to hear. But the risks do not matter, not when a child is in danger." He leaned forward slightly, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. "Listen to me, Princess. Your advisors might be right about some things. Humans are violent. We fight wars constantly. We live short lives and make stupid decisions. But there is one thing we will never do." "What is that?" "We will never ignore a cry for help. It does not matter who is crying or where they come from or what they have done. If we can help, we will. That is what makes us human." Stared at him for a long time. Then slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool against his warm skin, slim and delicate against his rough and calloused palm. "You are not what I expected," she said softly. "Neither are you." A small smile appeared on her face, the first one since her rescue. "My mother sings to me at night. When I was in that cell, I thought I would never hear her voice again. I thought I would be sold to some monster and never see my home. You will see it soon. We are only a few hours away." "And will you stay?" Shook his head. "We have to go back to Earth. There are families waiting for news about our fallen soldiers. They deserve to know what happened. The families of the men who died for me." "Yes." His grip on his hand tightened. "I want to meet them. When this is over, I want to meet the families of the people who saved me. I want them to know that their sacrifice mattered." Felt something warm spread through his chest. This princess, this child from a race that looked down on humanity, had more honor in her than most adults he knew. "I think they would like that," he said. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the medical bay's small window, could see a planet appearing in the distance. Prime, a world of crystal towers and ancient civilizations. "We are here," he said. Jumped up and ran to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. "Home, I can see it. I can see my home." Then her excitement faded into concern. "Captain, look." Stood and looked out the window. His heart sank. A fleet surrounded them. Dozens of ships, all with weapons powered and ready. They were beautiful ships, elegant and deadly, surrounding the damaged human frigate like wolves around wounded prey. "They think we are enemies," said from behind them. She had finally looked up from her grief, her eyes sharp and alert. "Communications are demanding identification," Lieutenant's voice came through the intercom. "They are threatening to fire if we do not respond." Reached for the intercom button, but stopped him. "Let me," she said. She walked to the communication panel and pressed the broadcast button. Her voice was no longer the frightened whisper from the distress beacon. It was strong, clear, and royal. "This is of House, daughter of Queen, heir to the throne. The ship that carries me is the human vessel Resolute. Its crew rescued me from the slavers of Station. They lost 3 of their own to save my life." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "These humans are my guardians. Anyone who threatens them threatens me. Stand down immediately." Silence. Then slowly the ships lowered their weapons. The formation parted, creating a clear path to the planet below. Stared at the young princess with new respect. "That was impressive," he said. Looked back at him with a tired smile. "My mother taught me that a princess must always protect those who protect her." She reached out and took his hand again. "Now come, it is time for you to meet the queen." The grand plaza of the capital had never seen anything like this. Thousands of citizens had gathered, their silver-blue forms filling every balcony and walkway that surrounded the massive open square. Crystal towers rose around them, catching the light of the twin suns and scattering rainbows across the crowd. It was beautiful, ancient, and perfect. And in the middle of it all, a battered human ship was landing. The Resolute looked terrible. Its hull was covered in burns and dents. One of its engines was smoking. The landing gear groaned as it touched the smooth white stone of the plaza. It was the ugliest thing they had ever seen in their pristine capital. But to Queen, standing at the base of the palace steps, it was the most beautiful sight in the universe. She had prepared for this moment. She had rehearsed her speech, practiced her composed expression, reminded herself that a queen must always appear calm and dignified. The nobles behind her expected nothing less. But when the ship's ramp lowered and her daughter appeared in the doorway, all of that preparation vanished like morning mist. Looked tired and dirty, her silver-blue skin smudged and her crystalline eyes red from crying. But she was alive. She was home. "Mom," screamed, breaking into a run. "Mom, I am back. He rescued me." She sprinted across the plaza, her small feet slapping against the stone, her arms outstretched. And Queen, ruler of a civilization that spanned 100 worlds, keeper of 10,000 years of tradition, did something she had not done in centuries. She ran to meet her daughter. They collided in the middle of the plaza, falling to her knees and wrapping her arms around so tightly that neither could breathe. The queen's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face as she held her child, her body shaking with sobs. "My baby," she whispered, her voice broken. My baby, you are home." "I was so scared," Mom cried into her mother's shoulder. "I thought I would never see you again, but then he came. The human captain came and saved me." The gathered nobles watched in stunned silence. They had never seen their queen cry. They had never seen her show any emotion beyond calm dignity. Now she was on her knees, weeping like any other mother who had almost lost her child. Behind them, Captain Park led his surviving crew down the ship's ramp. They looked nothing like the elegant around them. Their uniforms were torn and stained with blood. Their faces were tired and grim. Shoulder was wrapped in bandages, and Lieutenant had a cut above her eye that had only recently stopped bleeding. But they walked with their heads held high, with the pride of soldiers who had done their duty. Queen finally rose to her feet, still holding his hand. She wiped her eyes and looked at the humans approaching her. Her advisors had told her these creatures were primitive and violent, barely worth noticing. They were wrong. She walked forward to meet them, stopped a few feet away and saluted, the sharp military gesture looking strange in the graceful plaza. His crew formed up behind him in a straight line. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "Captain Park of the Terran Expeditionary Force, I am returning your daughter." Studied him carefully. This small, mortal creature had done what her entire fleet could not, what the Galactic Coalition would not. He had heard a child crying in the darkness of space, and he had come. "You lost soldiers," she said quietly. "For my daughter, for a people who have shown you nothing but coldness." His jaw tightened. "3 soldiers, Your Majesty, Private Bay, and Specialist O. They knew the risks. They went anyway." "Why?" The question hung in the air. Around them, thousands of waited for the answer. "Because someone asked for help," said simply, "and we were close enough to hear." Felt fresh tears forming in her eyes. Such a simple answer, such a human answer. She thought about all the times her people had dismissed humanity, all the times they had called them primitive, violent, unworthy of attention. They had looked at humans and seen short lives and constant wars. They had never looked deeper. They had never seen the heart. Slowly, deliberately, Queen bowed. Not a small nod of acknowledgement, but a full, deep bow of respect. The kind reserved for equals. The kind that had not been given to any none in over 1,000 years. The crowd gasped. Nobles whispered in shock, but did not care. "The Imperium has been blind," she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. "We looked at your short lives and saw weakness. We looked at your constant wars and saw savagery. We never thought to look at your hearts." She straightened and faced the crowd. "Let it be known, from this day forward, humanity stands as eternal allies of the Imperium. Any threat to Earth is a threat too. Any human in need will find help in our space. This is my decree as queen." She turned back to and placed her hand over his heart, a gesture of profound bond that was normally reserved for family. "And you, Captain Park, will be remembered in our histories as the human who taught a queen humility." Did not know how to respond. His throat felt tight, and his eyes burned with emotions he did not want to show. He thought about's wild grin as he held the junction alone. He thought about's quiet dedication and his last words about his sister. He thought about the families back on Earth who would receive folded flags instead of living children. "We just did what anyone should do," he managed to say. Smiled through her tears. "That, Captain, is exactly what makes your kind remarkable." Princess tugged on her mother's hand, then reached out and pulled into their embrace. The human soldier stood awkwardly for a moment, unsure how to react. Then he relaxed and put one arm around the young princess who had refused to let go of his hand during the entire journey home. Behind them, Lieutenant wiped her eyes and pretended it was just dust from the landing. Corporal cleared his throat roughly. Medic Song finally smiled for the first time since death, thinking that maybe her friend had not died for nothing. In the plaza below, a single citizen began to clap, then another, then 100, then thousands. The sound washed over the crew of the Resolute like a wave. It was gratitude. It was respect. It was the beginning of something new between two peoples who had never understood each other before. Captain looked up at the alien sky with its twin suns and strange stars. He thought about the long journey home, the reports he would have to file, the families he would have to face. He thought about, and in Bay, about the price they had paid for a child they had never met. But for now, in this moment, watching a mother hold her daughter and weep with joy, he allowed himself to believe it was worth it. "Captain," his voice broke through his thoughts. He looked down at the princess. "Yes." "When you leave, will you ever come back?" Glanced at his crew, then at the queen, then back at the young girl who had changed everything. "I do not know," he admitted. "The universe is big, and there are always more people who need help." "Then I will wait," said firmly. "And when I am older, I will find you. I will find all of you, and I will make sure the galaxy knows what you did for me." Queen placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "She will. My daughter keeps her promises." Smiled, the first real smile he had allowed himself in days. "I believe you," he said. Hours later, the Resolute lifted off from Prime, its engines repaired by technicians, its hull still but its crew no longer alone. As it rose through the atmosphere, looked out the viewport at the world shrinking below. Princess was standing on a balcony of the palace, waving. He raised his hand in return. The galaxy thought humans were primitive. Other races laughed at their short lives and their messy emotions. But those races did not understand what made humans special. It was not their technology. It was not their strength. It was their stubborn, beautiful refusal to ignore a cry for help. And as the Resolute jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying its heroes home, Captain Park knew one thing for certain. It would always be worth it.